the West, the Shah himself underestimated the power of religion in Iran. The Shah, Mohammad Reza Pahlavi, ruled Iran from September 1941 to February 1979. From the start, he was determined to transform his impoverished and feudal country into a modern industrialized nation. To BBC documentary makers who tracked most of his reign, he made a fascinating subject.
When you talk about your mission for your country, what exactly do you mean?
To bring our country within the limits of its possibility, natural-wise, population-wise, our intelligence, our sturdiness, our diligence, our vitality, our manlyhood, to its optimum capabilities and possibilities.
He was seen as regal, autocratic and overambitious, but the BBC, his ally America, and even the Shah himself were slow to spot the forces that would prove to be his real undoing. The Islamic Revolution toppled the Shah and brought Ayatollah Khomeini to power in 1979. It was the first religious revolution in modern history and the first televised revolution ever.
There's no mistaking what this, in fact, really is. It's a massive voice of protest against the rule of the Shah.
Day after day, the world woke up to images of Ayatollah Khomeini defying the Shah and the Americans. For the first time, the world witnessed the power of political Islam to change societies.
The political initiative now lies totally with the Ayatollah. Now that he's back, he'll very soon announce the establishment of a government of his own.
This is a tale of two men, one whose delusions overshadowed his ambitions, and one who never gave up his vision to establish an Islamic state.
In 1941, shortly after Hitler invaded the Soviet Union, British and Russian forces entered Iran against only token resistance by the Iranian army, after warning Reza Shah about his links with the Germans. The old Shah abruptly abdicated and went into exile. His 21-year-old son was faced with the formidable task of taking over a country suffering from the shock and humiliation of a foreign invasion.
What I reproach eventually my father is not to have been mined the oil fields and tell you that if you come, I'm going to blow up everything. But the worst was what happened next, that the occupation of the country led to so many evil, fifth columns and the reapparition of the feudal chieftains, also a very reactionary power of the clergy or the mullahs.
The first real threat to the Shah's power came in the early 1950s. A new Prime Minister, Mohammad Mossadegh, had won huge public support by taking Iranian oil back into government ownership and ending the 40-year monopoly enjoyed by the Anglo-Iranian Oil Company. Mossadegh then set his sights on the Shah. He wanted to curb his power and turn him into a constitutional monarch, a titular head of state. In August 1953, the Shah left for a holiday in Italy, believing that Mossadegh was about to force him to abdicate. But Mossadegh had miscalculated. This was the 50s and the height of the Cold War. America, fearing that Mossadegh was too close or too tolerant of a small but burgeoning communist movement in Iran, had already decided to act. 3 days after the Shah had left Iran, a military coup backed and orchestrated by the CIA removed Mossadegh from power. The Shah returned the following day. Back on the throne, the Shah consolidated his power. Parliament's wings were clipped, and he became, in effect, an absolute monarch. The Shah was now intent on turning Iran into a military superpower. In the 1950s, Iran's northern neighbor, the Soviet Union, was expanding its influence in the Middle East. Britain and the United States saw the Shah as a useful ally in their battle against Soviet expansion. Thousands of American military and civilian advisors started to work in Iran. With them came a large and steady flow of dollars. In the late 1950s, American military and economic aid amounted to 22% of the Iranian government's spending. Yet the Shah didn't rely on the Americans to protect Iran's borders from the Soviet Union. In a bold move, he struck a deal with the Russians.
Anything happens to me, what will happen to the country? I remember my father one day, told me that he was thinking of creating such a machine that will automatically run the affairs of the country when he goes. I was hurt. I thought that maybe he did not trust in me. But when I assumed power, I saw how right he was. That's why my job and endeavor is also to create a machine that could run really the affairs of the country, at least the ordinary affairs of the country.
He had already created his own intelligence agency. After the 1953 coup, the CIA helped him set up SAVAK, the Organization for National Intelligence and Security. To the Shah, the communists and supporters of Mossadegh were his only serious opposition. SAVAK ruthlessly suppressed them through torture and execution. In the early 1960s, the Shah embarked on what he called his White Revolution, an ambitious series of reforms. They included dividing large parcels of land among the peasants and changing Iran's electoral system. The reforms were intended to transform Iran from a feudal society under the guidance of religious leaders into an industrialized country where the mosque had no say. In elaborate ceremonies, the Shah personally handed out the deeds to the farmers. But it was the electoral reforms that set the Shah on a collision course with the country's real power base. On the 9th of October 1962, a high-ranking cleric sent a telegram to the Shah asking him to reverse the changes.
In the name of God, the Beneficent, the Merciful, Your Imperial Majesty. After expressing my greetings and blessings, newspaper reports indicate that in the law regarding local elections for provinces and cities, the government has not indicated that voters and those elected should be Muslim. Also, it has given women the right to vote. This has caused great concern for the eminent scholars and other groups of Muslims. Please order the reversal of those laws which are against the holy official religion of the country.
Ayatollah Ruhollah Mousavi Khomeini was one of the most prominent seminary teachers in Iran's religious capital, Qom. It was an ominous sign. The clergy, for the most part, had stayed out of politics. The unspoken deal was that they would back the monarchy as long as the monarchy protected the religious establishment. A year later, on the 3rd of June 1963, Ayatollah Khomeini went much further. It was the night of Ashura, the anniversary of the death of Imam Hussein, the grandson of the Prophet Muhammad. Ayatollah Khomeini compared the Shah to Yazid, the 7th century caliph who had murdered Imam Hussein.
Mr. Shah, I advise you, I'm telling you, Mr. Shah, that they are deceiving you. I really don't want people to be happy if they ask you to leave the country. Don't do whatever they ask you to do. Think for yourself. What is our relationship with Israel that the intelligence organization asks us not to talk about it? Is the Shah Israeli?
This time, Ayatollah Khomeini was arrested by the Shah's police. The next day, thousands of his supporters took to the streets of Tehran and the religious capital, Qom. The Shah was taken aback by the number of non-clerics who joined Ayatollah Khomeini's movement. Among them were members of the Freedom Movement of Iran, a political party which was formed in the early 60s by the supporters of Mohammad Mossadegh.
اون توده‌های مردمی که ما بهشون دسترسی نداریم از طریق این شبکه روحانیت که چندین هزار مسجد در تمام ایرانه، 180,000 روحانی در سرتاسر ایران، به هر کوره دهی که شما میرید یه مسجد، یه حسینیه است وجود دارن. همه اینها توی حوزه‌های علمیه درس خوندن، انسجام آموزش‌های عقیدتی دارن. همه اینا خودش یک شبکه بزرگ، یک ارتش ایدئولوژیک هستش. بنابراین آقای خمینی وقتی وارد مبارزه سیاسی میشه ما استقبال کردیم. دلیلش هم این بود که خب ما به اون توده ها دسترسی نداشتیم.
The army responded with brute force. The tanks moved in and opened fire on the demonstrators. The Shah's government announced that 20 people were killed. Ayatollah Khomeini's followers estimated that hundreds had lost their lives. The true numbers will never be known.
اون موقعی که این باعث نگرانی و تعجب شد که چطور مردم موقعی که یک برنامه‌های ریخته شده که به نفعشونه، به نفع کارگر و روستا و زن و گروه زحمتکش به قول چپی‌ها، چطور ممکنه که تظاهرات و شرکت میکنن در این تظاهرات. بعد که خب اونجا با کمک آقای علم که اون موقع نخست وزیر بود و واقعا مسئولیت یک نخست وزیر رو انجام داد که اینها رو خوابوند، دیگه ما فکر کردیم تمام شده.
نه تنها فکر میکردیم سرکوب شده و تمام شده، فکر میکردیم شاه شکست ناپذیره. ما همه اینو از شاه میدید، اصلا نمیدونستیم که بی علم همون بساط 15 سال بعد تکرار خواهد شد.
But even then, the Shah still felt the need to keep the clergy sweet. Under pressure from the religious authorities, he released Ayatollah Khomeini in April 1964. Later that year, the Ayatollah released a statement. He condemned the growing number of American military advisors in Iran and a law which gave US soldiers. Ayatollah Khomeini was ordered out of the country by Prime Minister Hassan Ali Mansour in November 1964. He eventually settled in the bastion of Shia Islam, the city of Najaf in Iraq. 2 months later, Mansour was assassinated by a supporter of the Ayatollah. The Shah immediately appointed Amir Abbas Hoveyda, who remained Prime Minister for 13 years.
I think the luck of this country is that he has such a Shah, and that the Shah is dealing with the affairs. As a matter of fact, if you look at our history, you find out that any time we had a strong Shah, this country went in the peak of development. Any time we had the weak Shah, the country was either occupied by you Britishers or by the Russian, I don't know by whom. Therefore, what is important is to have a strong Shah who certainly could bring behind him all the nation.
During much of Hoveyda's premiership, the economy grew steadily and Iran enjoyed what looked like a period of stability. The Shah's powers reached unprecedented heights, and he took to using the name enjoyed by the ancient Persian emperors, the shadow of God. Outside Iran, he and Queen Farah became international celebrities. But the seeming calm came at a price. Iran was now a police state. Savak had agents everywhere, including a special unit for student activists. In exile in Najaf, Ayatollah Khomeini had time to refine his vision of an ideal Islamic government. He called it Velayat-e-Faqih, a system, he wrote, in which a high-ranking Shia cleric would be the supreme leader of the country and have absolute control over the affairs of the nation. Dissent would not be allowed. Many devout young Iranian Muslims chose Ayatollah Khomeini as their marja, an object of emulation who could interpret the teachings of Islam for them. Abbas Abdi was among them.
اصلی ترین تفاوتی که میشه گفت بین امام و دیگر مراجع وجود داشت اعتقاد به اینه که ما یه حکومت میتونیم جایی بذاریم. حالا اینکه این حکومت چیه، مشخصاتش چیه، مسئله فرعی قضیه است، یا حداقل اون موقع فرعی مینمود. این که چنین چیزی رو داریم و میخوایم جایگزین کنیم، این بسیج کننده اصلی نیروها بود.
The man who called himself the shadow of God continued to underestimate the men of God in Iranian society. He had his own vision of the country he wanted Iran to be.
We want to couple modern technology with the spirit of our old civilization. We are 3,000 years old. There is a very specific and special relationship between me and my people. This maybe is not very well understood in other countries. And as long as this special relationship exists between myself and my people, I don't see where somebody should or could step in.
He really want to learn from Israel experience how Israel succeeded to do it, and he started to purchase every kind of aeroplane that only appear in America, F-14, F-16, F-18 only they spoke about. Before they appear, he bought 200 to be ready with a strong air force to use Israeli systems as a superpower to smash all possible enemies. The main enemies, as you know, used to be Iraq.
The Shah felt that Persian Iran, like Israel, was constantly under threat from its Arab neighbors. An alliance with Israel seemed natural. In particular, the Shah was worried about the most powerful man in Iraq, Vice President Saddam Hussein. Saddam never concealed his dislike for the Shah and for Persians in general. He resurrected border disputes between Iran and Iraq and forced thousands of Iraqis of Iranian origin into exile in the 1970s. At the time, Saddam was also traveling around the world trying to acquire the most sophisticated military equipment, including nuclear technology.
At the time, the Shah made it quite clear that the fact that Iran is threatened by the Arab states, and in particular by Iraq, made it of interest for Iran to establish a relationship with a country which is menaced by the same enemy.
Ironically, it was action by some of those same Arab nations that literally transformed Iran's fortunes. After the Seven-Day War in 1973, Arab oil-producing countries boycotted Israel's Western allies. The price of oil skyrocketed. Iranian oil revenues jumped from $4 billion in 1973 to almost $20 billion a year later.